In fact, let's continue talking about it. Let's continue
Okay,
sharing our experience.
a little catch up. Right before when we were getting all the links sent, and the hardware set up and the software going, I texted my main man J Dub and I said, "Hey, I'll be right back. Got to go burn a cig on the back porch real quick, get my mind right for this pod." And when I came back, he said, "How's that cig?" And I said, maybe not 100% accurately, but I said,
Mm.
they're never as good as you hope they are, but they're always just as good as they need to be. And you said you feel like,
You know, that's interesting because oftentimes you don't realize how good the thing is that you've got until
mm,
it's gone. And
mm,
so in that moment, that cigarette may be like, it's kind of mid. It's maybe 60%, 70%.
70, yeah.
But you don't actually realize, no, man, that cig right there is 99%. That's the good stuff.
Actually, I'd say it's
100,
100%.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to say 100.
It's 100 of what you need in that
That's right.
moment.
That's right. And so we were talking about my favorite routine back when I was a responsible cigarette smoker,
Hmm.
because there was a time when I was irresponsible.
Yeah, you don't want to indulge too much.
I feel like the most I ever got, and this was in the height of my smoking, the most I ever got was a pack a day. And that's kind of a lot.
That's pushing the edge.
Yeah, that's
That's
kind
pushing
of
the
that's
throttle.
that's being a little bit burdensome at that point.
I have, and I'm not casting any shade, but there are people in my life that I've recently seen. Like you get that reminder of what it looks like to be a pack a day smoker, and you're like, "Holy cow, you're really burning through 'em."
Yeah.
But then some people like from our childhoods that were like 2 packs a day.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was also back when they were probably like $2 a pack or even less.
Right,
I'm not sure how you spend $9 a, I mean, I guess you make time for the things you love.
right,
But
right.
yeah, no. So anyway, back when I was in my responsible smoking days, I was probably about half a pack a day at that point. But I would run in the morning, and then I would come home and I would drink coffee and smoke 2 cigarettes on my back porch, back to back. So
Yeah.
lighting one off of the other.
Yeah, and I said that lighting one, like lighting it with the fuse of the old, is kind of a different thing because I mean, I'm not saying I'm not disparaging it by any means, but it's different. It's maybe a more needy cigarette,
Yeah, there's something very
a little more fiendish.
needy. Is That's probably the best. That's probably the word I was looking for. There's something desperate about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I like to take the Bic. I like to hear the grinder against the flint. Is that what we decided it's called? The black graphite that's in it.
I think so.
Yeah, I like to hear the grinder against the flint. I like to hear the little psst of the butane, the lighter fluid inside of it. I even like the taste of the lighter fluid on the first
Mm,
draw.
mm.
I love it. Give it to me.
Yeah, give you that fuel.
Yeah, give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. But if you're taking one, if you're just taking one right off the other, using
We
the
don't
old
have
one,
time. We don't have time to light it to hit that lighter again.
that's a different kind of thing.
Yeah. I honestly wish that I wish they made such a thing as just a double decker cigarette.
Now, my A school smoke was a Turkish delight
Yes.
camel
Yes.
wide,
Yes.
and a
Oh,
wide
yeah.
was, I don't know if it was technically 2 cigarettes, but it was definitely more
Well,
tobacco than a regular.
well, help me out with this because I used to smoke the Camel Light 120s, which is the
Mm,
equivalent of the Marlboro Light 100s, right?
okay.
But I know that they had the Camel Wides.
Hmm.
I don't know that there was a price difference. And so I always wondered, why would you not charge me more for the 120s than you would the shorts? Because I'm getting like an extra third of a cigarette.
Well, I think they just wanted to get you. They just
I
wanted
just
to get
wanted,
you. They just wanted you to buy another pack. They
yeah.
they just wanted you on that hook,
They
son.
they probably knew that. Listen, it doesn't matter what we give him. He's
Yeah.
coming back. We got this one.
And how much of that was actual tobacco anyway, back then, as much as it was just the shavings off the shop floor? They'd sweep it up and dump it back into
Yeah.
the filler.
Occasionally, you get a piece of gravel,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
maybe a hair or something.
I mean, do you even notice a hair?
No, it just sizzles right up.
Right, right. There used to be. Have you ever found like corporate waste in any product, like a Hershey bar or a pack of cookies or anything? Because I
No,
I had a house parent at the group home I lived at. She used to work for, oh, I can't remember the name of the company, and maybe it's better that I don't because I don't want to put ourselves in any sort of jeopardy. But it was the name of the company that made cookies with elves on them and all of like the chocolate chip cookies and all the real,
yeah, yeah.
back when there was a whole aisle or two dedicated to just cookies, maybe 60% of them were packaged in this plant that she used to work
Did they
at.
take that away from us? Did they take away the multiple aisles of cookies?
Well,
Life has just gotten so serious
it's
with
definitely
war
not
and
as
poverty.
big. Yeah.
They're
And
like, you guys you don't need that many options for
the
cookies.
health nuts and the allergy kids now.
Fucking allergy kids.
Yeah, yeah. But she says, I remember hearing all kinds of horror stories of like insects that were in these places that would constantly
Yeah.
be found in the packaging.
Does it seem to you like there used to be more stories about people finding like a thumb in their baked beans or a mouse in their corn?
Now I don't know how valid it is, but I remember seeing pictures of, and it didn't stop me from drinking them, but a white monster Ultra Zero, which is my monster. That is my monster, a white monster Ultra Zero with a dead mouse inside of it. Have you
Yeah,
seen
that's
that?
no, I haven't. That sounds like the stuff nightmares are made of. But
But
that's the sort of thing you used to hear about. It seems like
all the
pretty
time.
pretty frequently.
My cousin Debbie, her friend in Ohio, found a thumb in
Yeah,
a Red Bull.
and because I always thought that, man, if that would be like the golden ticket, because surely you could have a conversation the
Don't
good
call me
folks at
Shirley.
with the good folks at Red Bull, and
Uh-huh.
I'll bet you could negotiate
A handsome settlement.
a decent amount of a decent number of cases. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like nobody else has to know about this. I feel like you could. I feel like you
How
could really
about
set yourself up.
10, 15 years of unlimited Red Bull? You
Yeah,
know?
and really, it's a win-win because surely you wouldn't make it past 5 after unlimited amounts of energy drinks.
They're like, yeah, just send this guy enough to OD
Oh,
on.
all of a sudden you're what's it called when
You're a
you're
statistic, son.
yeah, no, there's an age, like your actual age, and then like your,
Your biological age.
well, that would be your actual, but there's some sort of formula where you could be where your body may be 27 but your physical age is 40, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, that's how
that
I am.
age would jump up to 75 like within
Mm. Oh,
just a
yeah,
couple
yeah.
months probably.
When you're
Your
just
your
saturated
heart's,
in Red
yeah,
Bull, your heart's going at like 90% RPM all the time.
just red line nonstop.
Yeah, Red Bull, son. Now they
But
don't give you wings
though,
anymore.
your
Have you noticed
heart,
that?
just heart attacks, just heart
No,
palpitation.
yeah, the that's all they give you instead of the wings. They're
But
not
your heart
giving
is a
you Red
muscle,
Wings.
and this is don't mistake me because sometimes people think, because sometimes I say things with such confidence that people think that I know. And sometimes people may think, are you a doctor? And I'm not a doctor. Let me
Don't be
just,
fooled. He just
yeah,
sounds like one.
you're just likely going to think that I am.
Right.
But your heart's a muscle. So how often do you hear people say, hey, bro, give your biceps a rest. No, that's not what we do. We go all the way.
Yeah,
Like
wreck
we
them.
exercise,
One
you
more.
tear, yeah, go to
Give me one
failure.
more. Give me one
Take
more.
that muscle. That's right. Take it to failure. I don't understand why the heart doesn't work the same way.
I think it does.
If you quit being a bitch,
Now, what does it mean? Like, I understand because I don't have this problem. I'm just too chill. Like, what does it mean whenever I've heard lots of people having hypertension where their heart is has been redlined too much, and the doctor says, "Hey, buddy, you got to take a break." But
yeah,
what does it mean if your heartbeat is so low that that like your Apple Watch and stuff wakes you up in the middle of the night and says, "Hey, your heartbeat's below 28 beats a second. You need to
yeah,
move or do some jumping jacks."
yeah.
That,
I don't know. That you're just too chill. I guess you're
yeah.
just too cool.
Yeah.
Here's some headlines. Maybe you need a little anxiety.
Yeah.
Have you considered bills lately?
Maybe just because I have hypotension. I've had more than one doctor tell me that. Maybe that's just God's little gift to me. Like he knew his little soldier was going to bear so much.
Like yeah, like he's got you stretched way out.
Yeah.
So we're gonna give him extra shit, but we're gonna also give him real low blood pressure. So it's just kind of
Real low blood pressure.
just
The
kind
kind
of
of blood
balanced out.
pressure that makes him black out and fall through a wall if he stands up too fast.
The kind of blood pressure they're right about.
Yeah. Right there in the sweet spot. That's where I like to
What
consider
what what does cause that? Is that just a genetic thing?
it. Well, I haven't had any doctor tell me yet. I've had to wear a heart monitor for over a month. I've had to have a CAT scan, or no, I don't know. What's the difference between a CAT scan and a CT scan? Is there any?
No, I think that's what it stands
It's
for.
the same thing. Okay, I've had to have CT scans and EKG and wear a heart monitor and plenty of blood work. And eventually, like it normalizes long enough to where they're like, I think you're good.
Yeah. And you know what sucks about that is that's probably depending on your insurance company. That's probably $1,000 later that
Oh
they
yeah.
tell you, "Oh no, you're good." But what are you gonna do? Like I know in your case you had to do it, but
Yeah.
in typically you would have some sort of a concern, so you go to the doctor and they order these tests or whatnot, and then you pay $1,000 in various tests, and in the end they say, "Let's keep an eye on it." Well, what do you think I was doing?
That's why
That's
I'm
how
here.
that's how we got here.
Yeah.
We don't. If that's all we're going to do, then I'll just keep an eye on it myself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same thing of when I broke my wrist in Bahrain. The worst thing I ever did when I broke my wrist in Bahrain is tell someone about it. Because if
Yeah.
I just would have taped it up and kept that little secret to myself, I would have been fine. But I went and told my corpsman who did his due diligence and told my chain of command, hey, B Wood broke his, or I think he said Whiskey broke his wrist. Um, all of a sudden I got sent home for like a month and a half, had to wear a cast and get the cast taken off. I had pins in my wrist and everything. If I just would have taped it up, and it was a scaphoid fracture, one of those little floating bones in your wrist. It was this wrist. One of those little floating bones that don't really do anything. Just there
Yeah.
to absorb shock is all
Just
they're
for
there for.
looks.
Yeah. If I just would have taped it up and kept that little secret to myself, I would have stayed on deployment the whole time. I did end up going back. They sent me back, but
Yeah.
with this heart thing, I mean that's exactly what happened. It ended up haunting me for like a year and a half because I changed locations, so I was still in the VA system, but I changed VA doctors and physical locations, and when I checked into my new place, they were like, "Is there anything we should know about?" I'm like, I probably shouldn't worry about it, but this is what was going on at my last place." I'm like, "Well, let's order the whole list of blah 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 again."
No huge deal. I just crashing through walls, Can't.
Every once in a while, I black out. Um, uh, I mean, that's kind of been a theme.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's your thing.
I'm fucking rock and roll, son. But yeah, and so they end up forgetting about it, and that dragging the story way out. way too far, but they end up forgetting about it. I about a year later, or almost a year later, I'm getting my own life insurance, and they're like, "Hey, can we do a?" They request my medical records from my provider. I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no thing. I'm healthy as a horse." They came to my house, did a physical on me. I told them what they needed to know during the physical.
Yep.
And they're like, "Can we get your medical records?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Sign them, get my medical records. A couple months later, they're like, "Hey, we can't give you life insurance because the VA has ordered this echo test for you about a year ago, and it never shows that you got your
The
echo test."
VA has ordered your assassination. So listen, you're not, this is just bad business for us.
Yeah, I'm like, "Have you guys heard of the VA? They don't exactly have it together all the time." So, I end up going back to the VA. I'm like, "Hey, can I get this echo test just knocked out of the way?" Actually, I was like, "Hey, can I get reevaluated and you guys see if I need this or not?" Because I know if I walk in on there on any given Tuesday or Wednesday, they're going to go, "Yep, you're good," and just check a box and tell me I'm fine. So I say, "Can I get reevaluated to see if I need this echo test?" No reply. No callbacks. This is a messenger that the VA uses an app for. No reply messages, no callbacks. All of a sudden, about like 16 days later, a package shows up on my front door and it's the echo test, a heart monitor that I have to wear. And so I called them again. I'm like, "Hey, no one gave me instructions. No one told me this thing was going to show up, yada, yada." No answer. I end up following, there's a QR code. I follow some instructions from the QR code and like have to shave my chest and tape it to me. Um, I wear it like halfway through my treatment. They end up calling me back. They're like, "Oh, yeah, you're supposed to do this, this, and that." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, bud. I'm already a couple weeks into this."
I really, really hate the fact that that little system worked for them of, of the QR code and making you do it online.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
as much as operators annoy me, which I
they
won't talk
do.
about, uh, I want to talk to somebody. I don't want the phone
Yes.
tree. And it pisses me off that it worked and that they got you to register and do what you needed to do without talking to anybody.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so yeah, uh, I ended up doing the whole thing and still haven't heard anything back of it. I think all the tests were like, "Yeah, he's good to go," because no one has said a word since then. I've mailed it in almost a month
Well,
ago now.
well, I don't. I mentioned it. I alluded to it that I don't like to give medical advice, but
Go ahead.
I just think you probably just need more monster white thunders or whatever that was. Get your heart kind of. You
Ultra
just need,
zeros.
yeah. You need a little more stimulation than most of us, and that's okay.
Brother, I'm
So
chasing it.
yeah,
Believe me. Believe me, I'm chasing it.
do what you got to do.
So, yeah, man, what's been going on with you?
Well, I've been playing probably an unhealthy amount of golf lately.
Oh, okay. I thought you were about to
Um,
say football, and I was,
no, I did have a football match last night
yeah.
out on the indoor pitch,
Okay.
and I
You were a
scored.
different.
I
Oh,
scored.
hell yeah.
Yeah, I was in a little bit of a scoring drought, and um,
And what position? Are you a striker?
well, in indoor, it's kind of everybody's.
Okay.
Everybody plays all the positions.
Back to Little League rules. Y'all just swarm on the ball.
Well, so I'm new to it, and so I'm figuring it out. And the team that I'm playing on, they've been playing for a while, and so basically they just yell at me the whole game, tell me where to go and where to stop going.
That's good.
And I think what I figured out is that they want you to mark a man at about midfield, and then from that point on, you just stay with that. Like that's your
That's your
person.
guy.
So, yeah. Um, but so yeah, so I never really know should I be playing up front or should I be playing back defense? I usually try to be the last person just because that's like
Well, you want to give them someone to pass to if they have to, and you want to be in the
yeah,
position to block the
yeah,
ball if you're on defense.
yeah. So anyway, yesterday I got the ball and I'm not gonna lie, it was more of a pass. Um, but it did go in the net. Like it looked like I did it on purpose. And
All
so
right. All
I was
right.
just real cool about it. I've got this cold going on. So I was walking back and did a little cough, like, you know, still putting in the work, even though I'm not 100%.
Amen.
And yeah, I felt real good about that.
Amen.
But
There.
yeah, so I've just been playing a ridiculous amount of golf. And I've also been, I don't remember if I mentioned it on here or if I just mentioned it in a phone call. Um, I've been really interested in the ego and what the ego is
Mm.
and how we interact with it and all of that kind of stuff. And I think I noticed that I've got a massive ego.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I know. And so I've been kind of working on that. But the reason I bring that up is because I find that when I'm playing golf, or actually, man, maybe it's the golf course's fault
Hmm.
because it seems like
It's definitely
it,
not your fault.
well, I thought that it was. I came into this prepared to say that I've got a massive ego that I need to deal with. But as
I'm
I'm thinking,
glad you reevaluated
uh,
that.
yeah, that was almost a difficult path.
Woo!
Uh, uh, because as I'm thinking of the scenarios that all of the examples that I could give of my ego being out of control, like 9 out of 10 of them are at the golf course.
Yeah.
So that clearly tells me that this isn't a me problem. This is a them
Yeah.
problem.
Right.
Um, but so yeah, I've been working on that, and I just been seeing some flare ups at the course. But I just finished. It's pretty quick listen. I think it was only like 6 hours. Just finished Ryan Holiday's book. The ego is the enemy,
Okay.
and it was pretty good. Honestly, I is that the name of his podcast?
No, I think one of his podcasts is the Daily Stoic, but he also has the Daily Dad, and he might have some others. I don't know.
Well, maybe I had just looked at it before, but I thought that I had read or heard the book, but I couldn't find it in my library, so I bought it again and listened to it, and it was good. It was yeah, I don't know that there was anything groundbreaking in it, but it was just
Well,
and
it was
and
enough to almost mislead you to thinking that you had an ego problem.
yeah. Good that I finished it, and then I just started "The Food of the Gods" by Terrence McKenna.
Hell yeah.
Um, so I've been busy with golf, been busy with doing some heavy thinking and some life evaluating, and
Yeah.
some pretty heavy listening.
Sweet. I just finished yesterday I finished The Odyssey by Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry's rendition of The Odyssey. Man, it's good.
What exactly is the Odyssey, and is it a like are there multiple stories called the Odyssey? That I know there probably
Yeah.
are, but I mean, like, you hear about the classic. There's one classic, and is it by Homer?
Yeah. The
Okay.
Odyssey is kind of a part two to Troy or the Iliad. The Iliad and then the Odyssey, or there's different interpretations of it. There have been for like hundreds of years. But a real famous version of the story of the Odyssey, and the story of the Odyssey is Odysseus's, so you can see the name Odyssey, Odysseus. Odysseus is journey home from the Iliad, from the Battle of Troy, or from the Trojan War. Um, and man, it's good.
When was the original written?
Homer wrote his, I believe. I think traditional sources give it to like 700 before current era, but I think they say the earliest manuscripts are found like 700 BCE, but it was tradition says that he wrote it like near to 1,000 BCE. I want to say anyone
Wow.
can do a Wikipedia check on that to get the
Is
right dates.
is that crazy that a
It's a three
story
thousand year old story.
isn't that crazy that it's still and so you read or listen to?
Listen to.
So you listened to a rendition of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What is the story?
Well, the story is Odysseus, and the whole thing, it's kind of the whole thing, at least through the way that Stephen Fry, like you really pick it up through Stephen Fry, and he even explains that it's kind of Homer's message too. It was like the crescendo of the age of the gods handing it off into the age of men. Like
Mm.
there was, because there's the whole mythos series, there's the hero series before that of like creep my phone is listening to me of so like the ancient, and this is all based on the Greek pantheon, and it's all based on, so through the lens of the Mediterranean, specifically Greece. But like their whole creation story, how their gods came to be, going back from like the the Titans is like a Romanized word of them. In Norse mythology, it would have been the giants, but it's all like these primordial forces. So you have like Gaia, Earth, Kronos, time, um, Uranus or Uranos, which is like
Your butthole.
sexual urge. So like these forces that predate even the gods, or like the earth was here before the gods. Sex drive was here before the gods. Time has existed before the gods. You see this in all the ancient mythologies. I bet the Ugaritic pantheon that El was the head of even had these figures in it also. Um, and these primordial forces give birth to the people that we understand of like the god of lightning, the god of love, the god of war, the god of hunger, the god of partying, all these different gods that eventually create man, and in the early days have a very heavy-handed influence of like what, and when I say man, it's mankind, so there's obviously men and women in it, but of what men and women rise and fall and their role in the world. And the big crescendo is in this, and it comes down to, it was a vanity contest. There was a wedding. I know I'm jumping all over the place. Sorry. There was a wedding between an earthly king, a mortal king, and a nymph, but so like a spirit of the woods, or she happened to be a spirit of the water, and one their child happened to be Achilles. But there was a wedding going on, and all of the immortals were invited to this wedding except for one. But she showed up anyway, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who she was, but she was one of the female goddesses, and she showed up with this golden apple, and on the written on the apple was "to the fairest," and she rolled it at Zeus's feet. And Zeus picked up the apple, and Helen, his wife, was like, "Oh, obviously that goes to me." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, obviously." And then Athena was like, obviously that goes to me, Father, the goddess of wisdom. So the queen of God, or the queen of heaven, so like Arashira or Ashera. And then wisdom says, Father, Athena, obviously that goes to me. And he was like, "Oh, yes, my dear." And then Aphrodite, the goddess of like love and romance, says, "Father, obviously that's supposed to go to me." And he was like, "Oh shit, I don't know who this is supposed to go into." And Hermes, one of the gods of wisdom, says, "Hey, there's not someone born yet, but I can make someone be born that will be the perfect judge, the perfect impartial judge of who this apple's supposed to go to." And he's like, do it, Hermes." And so he contrives the birth of this guy named Paris. And Paris was one of the sons of the king and queen of Troy, which was like, it actually represents Asia. So like even up until now, the Turks versus the Greeks, there's always this big animosity between Asia and Greece, and it's Asia versus Europe. Like that's the big animosity. Even today, it's East versus West. Like you can hear that in like Islam versus Christianity, or Russia versus Europe, or China versus America, or even Iran versus the world right now. It's Asia versus the West, East versus the West. And that was going on thousands of years ago in Troy versus Greece. So, Hermes contrives for Paris to be born, but before Paris is born, one of the king and queen of Troy's daughters was this gal named Cassandra, and Apollo, a god of another god of wisdom, but also a god of like prophecy, gave Cassandra. Cassandra was supposed to be very beautiful, and he was trying to seduce Cassandra, and he gave Cassandra the gift of prophecy, and she was elated, and she still ended up being a god, priestess of Apollo. Yeah, and so he gave Cassandra the gift of prophecy, and she was like, "Oh, thank you." And whenever he said, "Hey, you like this gift I gave you?" he tried to move on her physically, and she rejected him. She goes, "Oh no, you can't have me physically." Well, he tried to hold her down, and she still fought and kicked against him, so he spit in her mouth. And when he spit in her mouth, that gave her the curse of like everything she says is going to come true, but no one's going to believe her. So that's her curse of like she knows exactly what's going to happen, but unfortunately, it's always going to fall on deaf ears. That was her curse for rejecting Apollo's forceful ways. So they're going. The Queen of Troy is pregnant with Paris, and Cassandra says, "Hey, this baby is going to be born, but he's going to be the death of us all. You have to get rid of him." And everyone just laughs her off and rejects him. Well, she still has, I can't remember which, she still has the favor of some gods and goddesses. So the gods end up visiting the king of Troy in a dream. I might be getting this wrong, but this is the general story. And they end up telling the king, like, "Oh no, you have to get rid of this kid. This kid is going to be the downfall of Troy if you don't get rid of this kid." So they end up giving, they end up, you're going to see some parallels into some of our stories on this, but they end up giving this baby to a farmer. The king and queen have birth in secrecy and say, "We can't kill him. He still has to be saved." So they end up giving this baby to a farmer and say, "Hey, you take him out and you kill him." Well, he takes him out into the woods and says, "Oh man, I can't kill this baby. Even though he's going to be the death of us all, he's still too precious. He's still too precious to kill." So he wraps him in swaddling clothes and puts him in a basket and sends him down a river. Well, a she bear finds this baby and raises him, like milks him, gives him her teat, and gives him some life. And another farmer ends up finding him and raising him as his own. Or it might have been the same farmer. Like he went back out into the woods to check on him and said, "Oh, this baby's still alive. Must be ordained by the gods." Fast forward, this baby becomes a farmer and like ends up becoming real athletic and real wise. He's gifted by all the gods. Hermes comes and visits him, makes sure that he's real wise. And the goddesses that were in this beauty contest come to him one morning while he's laying down. He thinks it's a dream and says, "Okay, it's time to choose. Which one of us is the fairest?" And Helen comes to him and says, I'll make you the king of the world. Like you'll be a ruler amongst men. You're gonna be the greatest ruler ever." And he says, "Well, obviously it's you, Helen." And Athena comes to him and says, "Oh no, no, no. I'm gonna make you wiser. I'm gonna make you the wisest amongst men. You're gonna know everything. And then you're obviously gonna become the king of the world because you're gonna be so wise." And he's like, "Well, obviously you, Athena." But Aphrodite comes to him and shows him a picture of this gal named, sorry for coughing in the mic, shows him a picture of this gal who's not yet here, but who's going to come, named Helen. And Helen is one of the many daughters that I believe Zeus has laid with mortal women and is going to be the most beautiful mortal to ever be born. And Aphrodite shows him, said, "Hey, if you pick me, then you're gonna get this sweet piece of trim to lay down with." And he says, "Well, the apple is yours." So he gives her the apple, and he's kind of second guessing himself. He's like, "Oh, maybe I should have chosen power or wisdom." But by the time he looks back, Helen and Athena are already going back into heaven. And so she's like, "You've made your choice, homie. You let your little head take over your big head, so you got to live with it." So they all fly off, and he wakes up and thinks it was just a dream. He's like, "Ah, no bother anyway." Well, in the meantime, Helen is born, and she is so beautiful. She's the daughter of a king and queen herself. She is so beautiful that all of Greece start almost go to war with themselves to find out who's going to marry her. Well, Odysseus comes up with this plan and he already has his own wife, Penelope. He's actually the only king. There's lots of little kingdoms in Greece. He's actually the only
Now,
king,
where did he come from?
Ithaca.
Like
If
in the story, where did he?
Odysseus?
Yeah, he just showed up.
Well, okay, yeah, sorry. Odysseus is one of
And listen, I'm enjoying Story Hour, by the way.
okay. All
I
right.
really am, and so I hope our listeners are too.
Hey, whether you like it or
I
not, you're in for it.
Yeah, and you're doing this all from
From
memory.
memory right now. That's right. I
Love
got
it.
no notes in front of me. This is all off the old melon. Um, so there's a couple key players in here, and I'm not going to remember all the names, but Agamemnon is the king of what is going to become known as Sparta. And in Stephen Fry's version, he calls the place Sparta, but in Homer's version, Sparta wasn't a thing yet, so he called it like the Peloponnese. Um, he Agamemnon is like, and even back before they were Sparta, the Peloponnesian were like the baddest infantrymen, the baddest standing army on the whole peninsula. It's not quite a peninsula; it's like a Pella something because it's a peninsula and a collection of islands. But Sparta, or what would have become Sparta, we'll just call them Sparta, is still the baddest. Everyone fears Sparta, and Athens is in there, and Ithaca, and the place might be Crete. Crete is definitely in there a lot. Um, where Menelaus is from. Menelaus is Agamemnon's brother. Those are the three kings we're going to really remember: Agamemnon, Menelaus, and Odysseus. Well, all these kingdoms start almost come into a civil war of who's going to marry Helen because she's the hottest piece around, like hotter than anyone has ever seen. Well, Odysseus already has his wife Penelope, and he goes to Agamemnon, who they're already calling King of Men at this time because everyone's afraid to go to war with Sparta. So he's kind of like the de facto big man around and says, "Hey, I've got a plan. You guys come up with a lottery, and whoever wins the lottery gets to marry Helen." And he's like, "Well, everyone else is going to be super jealous." He's like, "You get everyone to agree that whoever wins this lottery um, wins Helen's hand, and whoever doesn't has to support the person who wins Helen if she ever happens to be kidnapped and if she ever happens to be carried away to a foreign land." And so he's like, "That'll do it." So everyone agrees that because everyone has a chance, at least in theory, everyone has a chance to win Helen. Except Agamemnon asks Odysseus, like, "Well, don't you want to be part of this?" He's like, "No one's going to agree to this if you're writing the rules because you obviously know a way to win this." He says, "Nope, I got Penelope. I'm good with Penelope." And Ithaca was like famously not a fertile land. They didn't have enough land there to raise horses or enough vegetation there to raise horses. They only raised goats. It wasn't good for farming. Like they lived off of fishing and seaweed. Like it was kind of the scrummy little land. He was like, "I'm happy with my lot." He goes, "I got Penelope, I got my goats, I'm good over on Ithaca." And so he was like, "Okay, let me bring this to the rest of the kings." All the kings agree, "Yep, we've all got a chance to win her. And if not, we're going to defend whoever does win her." So they do this little lottery system, and Menelaus, Agamemnon's brother, ends up winning the hand of Helen. So they have kids and they're, living happy. While this is going on, Paris um, ends up finding Troy. That was another thing, is the farmer who raised him as his son was like, well, you can never go to the city. You got to stay out here with the cows and with the livestock. If there whenever it comes time to sell the livestock in the city, I'll take care of that. Well, one day dad becomes sick. Farmer dad becomes sick, so he has to take the livestock without permission. Like took it on his own shoulders to take the livestock to the city. And so he ends up going to the place where he never should have been, to the place where everyone else thought he was dead. And as this is going on, there's some sort of other party going on where they're having this contest, almost like, imagine these. Did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Uh, a couple episodes, but I don't.
Well, in Game of Thrones, they have these like tournaments, like these jousting tournaments where all the knights and stuff come together and there's a bunch of physical contests. Well, they're having this sort of thing in the city of Troy. And Troy is historically, it going back a couple generations, Hercules went to Troy on his adventures. That's a whole nother cool story. But he was one of the sons of Zeus and a mortal woman, and he ended up going crazy and killing his wife and son or children, and had to pay these 12 trials, the 12 trials of Hercules, to make penance so he could end up going to heaven. And he ended up doing it so well where they made him a god of strength. Hercules went to Troy one time on his way to one of his trials, and they ended up sliding him somehow. And so he was like, I'm not going to deal with you now, but I'm going to deal with you later. He goes, finishes his trial, comes back, and like waylays the city, kills everyone. It's a bloodbath, and there's only one little boy that's left. Well, that one little boy that's left is like, hey, I'm going to rebuild this and I'm going to make it to where no one can ever do this again. So he makes these giant walls and he makes this impregnable city. And since Hercules, other armies have come and tried to destroy Troy, but they always crash at the walls. Troy has these famous walls where no one can get past the walls. So Paris goes to this, brings the livestock in to sell, ends up seeing this tournament that's going on. And he's like, wow. And kind of like almost accidentally ends up falling into the fray. Like the crowd kind of pushes him in there. And so he ends up fighting with these, well, for lack of a better word, knights and princes and kings and stuff, and ends up beating everyone. Well, one of the princes takes it, and it's like sparring matches. It's like wrestling and boxing and archery and stuff like that. Well, one of the princes takes it so personal. Was like, this little beggar's coming in here and whooping up on everyone. We got to teach him a lesson. So they end up drawing real swords on him and chasing him through the city, and they get him cornered. And finally, the queen, I guess, recognizes her son and says, no, you can't kill him. This is my beloved son. This is the one that was supposed to. Oh, that was the thing, is this whole feast was on his birthday. It was
Mhm.
supposed to be the day that they remembered they sacrificed their son for the sake of the city. And they're like, the gods gave us our son back on his birthday. Obviously, this is the will of the gods. So he like, welcome back, my boy. They bring him back into the kingdom. And he's basically kind of a shit. Like he's bored with everything. They try to teach him statecraft and he ignores statecraft. They try to teach him like military stuff and he's like, yeah, this is boring too. Well, they're like, how about you be an ambassador? And one of his brothers is like, well, one of the cool things about ambassadors is we always bed all these queens and these princesses whenever we're out on our ambassadorships. And he's like, that I can do.
That sounds like a job.
That sounds like a job for old Paris. Still thinking with his little head. So um, they say, yep, that's your job. So Hector and Paris go to Menelaus's kingdom. And it happens to be that while they show up to Menelaus's kingdom, Agamemnon has taken his brother Menelaus on some military campaign, so Menelaus isn't there. The only one to welcome him was Helen, the person that Aphrodite promised him in his in her dream or in his dream in her vision. And so they meet, and she has been married for years, has kids with Menelaus, but she's like, "F all that, I'm yours, homie." And they like there's a chapters devoted to their lovemaking, and they're like abandoning the world, and they just fall head over heels. It's it's boyhood, it's childhood fantasy and childhood passion that overcomes them and takes them away from their senses. And so he kidnaps Helen, she escapes with him, and they take her back to Troy. Well, the Trojan king and queen welcome him, and Hector's like, "Hey, this is not good for us. We cannot stand up against Menelaus. We cannot, definitely not against his brother, the king of Sparta." And he has all these other kings that have sworn allegiance to this exact situation. Like, if you take Helen, we're going to be fighting all of Greece. We cannot do this. And he's like, "Brother, I'm just in love. I'm lovesick. Love conquers all." So he's like, "If I can't stop you out of it, you're my brother. So we'll make sure we defend her." They take her back to Troy. Troy welcomes her with open arms. And the king and queen never mention a word of it. They're like, "Hey, Helen, you're one of us. Welcome to the family. You're a Trojan now." Menelaus and Agamemnon come back, and Menelaus is blood red mad. He's thinking, he took my wife, the most beautiful, piece that has ever walked this earth. And Agamemnon, who has been on these campaigns, I'm watching a possum walk into the woods. It's always pretty cool. Agamemnon, who has been called the king of man up to this point, has a huge ego, and the apple of his eye has been Asia. And Troy is the gateway into Asia. It's across the sea into Asia, like where Turkey is. They found the remnants of Troy, I think, like back in the 80s or 90s. Everyone had thought it was a myth, but
Oh, I
yeah,
was actually going to ask about that. If it
Troy,
was a real place.
Troy was a real place, and they found the walls destroyed. Doing a little Quentin Tarantino, the walls were eventually destroyed, like the
In
Jericho walls almost.
modern day where?
Turkey, which is Asia, which has the greatest animosity against Greece. Um, so uh, Agamemnon says, "Hey, this is our chance. Go round up all the kings that swore allegiance to this exact situation. We're going to go to war against Troy." He said, "I'm finally going to," because Troy was the only city that was supposed to be, I guess, greater than any city in Greece. Greece was like Olympus was there and Crete was there. And Athens was the shining example of what man can be, but they never quite had a city like Troy, especially since that one prince rebuilt Troy, and that one prince happens to be the king of Troy now. The one son that Hercules didn't kill is the king of Troy now. So Agamemnon's like, "All right, I'm going to go get my best city, the best city on earth. It's going to be Troy." They uh they round up all the kings. The only king that doesn't show up is Odysseus. And Odysseus is playing crazy. Like, this is the one scenario that he thought would never happen because he made this fail-proof plan that no one's going to go to war against all, because if one goes to war against him, all of the others are going to go to war against that one person. So he thought this would never happen. When Agamemnon sends his ambassadors to go get Odysseus, he's playing crazy. He shows up and Penelope's like, "I don't know what happened to him. He's just gone stark raving mad. He smeared like horse manure all over himself. He had a plow down on the beach." And this is like supposed to be an example of how he had lost his mind. He was plowing the beach, and obviously there's no reason to plow the beach. You can't grow anything there. And one of the ambassadors says, "Oh, I'll see if he's crazy or not." They start throwing rocks at him. He doesn't blink. He's just mumbling to himself, has dookie smeared all over himself. Doesn't phase him. He's like, I'll hurl insults at him. Start hurling insults at him. Doesn't phase him. Well, Penelope and Odysseus had just had a boy, and his name escapes me. I was wanting to flex with the name of their boy, but he's going to be big in the story of the Odyssey. Right now, I'm going over the story of the Iliad. the Trojan War. Um, he picks up his first and only son and lays him down in front of the plow where the plow is going to run over. Well, of course, Odysseus is playing crazy, so he stops the plow. He's like, you caught me. I'm not going to run over my boy. And they're like, that's right. We're going to war. You got to come with us. So he kisses his wife goodbye, kisses his one and only son goodbye, and he goes to fight this war in Troy. There's a bunch that happens in this war in Troy, but this war lasts 10 years. And 10 years is supposed to be like unimaginable time for war to go on. Fast forward a couple thousand years, we've doubled that, homie.
We got that mastered.
Yeah, we've got that mastered. But the Trojan War lasts 10 years. There's millions dead on both sides. All these heroes die. Some of the Greek gods are in favor of Troy, like Troy is, because these are the only gods that exist, quote unquote. Some of these gods are fighting for and like manipulating things behind the scenes in favor of Troy. Some of them are doing the same thing for the Greeks. And Achilles is this badass who, like, basically, Achilles cannot be beat. His mom, who was a lower goddess, a nymph, dipped him in the river Styx, and that was the only way to make them immortal. She had this is kind of crazy. She had a bunch of kids by this king that was at the wedding, and happened to be that every time she had a kid, she'd come back and report to her husband, sorry, he died. Well, what she was doing was trying to, because she had a prophecy from Athena, a prophecy from Athena saying that she's going to give birth to the greatest warrior that the world has ever seen. But the only way that can happen is if she makes him immortal. And the way to make him immortal is as soon as he's born, you got to lay him in a fire. And if he doesn't burn up, that's the one. And after he doesn't burn up,
That is true.
obviously everyone
Little,
knows.
yeah. Well, I was
That's
going to say little known facts, but maybe it's
little
a well
known
known
fact.
fact.
Yeah. So after like 9 kids, they all burn up to a crisp. She gives birth to Achilles. Achilles doesn't burn up in the fire. So she's like, oh, this is my boy. I got to make him immortal. Well, to finish the job of making him immortal, she she has to dip him in the river Styx. Well, she holds him by his Achilles tendon, the tendon right behind his heel, or I guess right above his heel, going from his calf to his heel. She holds him by that and plunks him in there, baptizes him, makes him a god in the river, pulls him out, and says, now you're immortal. So Achilles, fast forward to the Trojan War, A kind of has a hatred against Agamemnon because Achilles is almost like unbridled in a weird way, even though he's super egotistical, he's like unbridled truth versus unbridled ego. So it's like the two extremes battling each other, even though they're fighting on the same side. Achilles is all about the truth no matter what, the truth, truth, truth. And he can't be defeated. Well, Agamemnon is all about his ego and his picture and his standing. Well, he makes himself so big in his standing where he can't be defeated. These two kind of hate each other, but Achilles is eventually always subordinate to Agamemnon because he works for Agamemnon. Agamemnon's the king of man. Um, Achilles at one point sacks a temple dedicated to Apollo, and in that temple he finds Cassandra. I'm just going full bore into this whole story right now.
Let's
Um,
do it.
he finds Cassandra and he falls head over heels in love with her. Love is kind of funny in here because he also brought his cousin with him, and his cousin also happens to be his lover in this story, like his second cousin or whatever. They also happen to be boyfriend, if you will. But this is Greek times. It's different back then. Um, well, his cousin welcomes Cassandra into the tent. Oh, and oh man, the name just escaped me. Achilles is kind of like a king himself. His army is the Argonauts, which are the ant people, and in like a separate creation myth, the Olympians created man, and they got fire and all from Prometheus and all this stuff. Well, another like little side experiment was when the gods created man out of ants. They found this ant colony and created man out of ants, and those were the Argonauts. Well, Achilles was the king of the Argonauts, and they
I
were
wish
the
I could have heard this. I wish I could have heard this account as a kid.
yeah,
This is so much cooler.
yeah.
It's so much cooler of an explanation than what we got.
Right. Well, you got to check out Stephen Fry. He has Troy, which is the story of the Iliad, and then he has the Odyssey, which is the part two, kind of the Iliad. It's actually Troy is part three and Odyssey is part four because there's the mythos before that and there's the heroes before that, which is like Jason and Hercules and all these other Greek heroes. And so it's mythos, heroes, Troy, Odyssey. Well, we're just doing Troy and Odyssey with some of the others sprinkled in there. But Achilles, with who's like he's a Jesus figure. He's a god. He's a man god on Earth. There's a bunch of those in the Greek stories. But Achilles is a man god. Unbeknownst to him, he doesn't know the full story that he's immortal. He's just fighting with truth on his side, with like reckless truth. Like no matter what, I'm going to be the truth is going to win. Versus Agamemnon's ego and appearance. He ends up finding Cassandra, and Achilles, his cousin lover welcomes him in there too. They have a thruple kinda together. Uh, he's like he's head over heels with her, and actually he fights harder with her in his tent, even though she wants to. She's a Trojan, and she's mad or she's upset to see her brothers and her countrymen being slaughtered. She's still in love with Achilles, and Achilles is still in love with her, and it's kind of good old days. Well, Achilles ends up mouthing off to Agamemnon about one matter or another, and Agamemnon was like, "You know what, you little twat? I'm gonna teach you. I'm gonna take." Or no, you know what happens is Agamemnon is mistreating another one of the princesses that he kidnapped. Might be mixing some things up here, but just bear with me. Agamemnon is mistreating one of the princesses that he kidnapped, and Achilles says, "Hey, that's not right what you're doing. You need to let her go." And oh, there's some other things in here too. Agamemnon ends up like sacrificing his daughter, but to get winds to sell from Greece because the gods tried to stop him from selling from Greece to Troy, but he ends up sacrificing his daughter, so that's like a blood crime. Oh, and he invites his daughter. This is what happens: is he invites his daughter to be sacrificed. He knows that she wouldn't willingly come if he says, "Hey, come on down to the beach. I need to sacrifice you to the gods so we can get wind to sail there." This is when they're on another island on their way to Troy. Instead, he says, "I tell you what, if you come and join us, you're going to marry Achilles." And Achilles doesn't know about this, but Agamemnon tricks his daughter into coming down here to be sacrificed so they can get the winds to sail. It's kind of like a story of Isaac or Ishmael, depends on what camp you go in there. But his daughter comes, and he ends up sacrificing his daughter to the gods to appease them so they can get wind. Well, at the last second, I'm Quentin Tarantino and some stuff. At the last second, the gods take his daughter from the pyre and put a deer in there in the stead, or a goat, if you will, a ram. And so he ends up sacrificing the ram or the deer to the gods instead of, but they think he sacrificed his child so they can get the blessings from their god to go fight. Achilles finds out about this after he already has Cassandra and says, "Hey, this is fucked up. I'm not going to fight for you." And he says, "Well, you know what, you little twat? I'm going to take your favorite little prize," and takes Cassandra out of his tent. Well, he takes Cassandra out of his tent, and Achilles says, "That's fine. You can go and do this. You're just going to do it without me." So Achilles kind of sets out the war. And in these battles where Achilles isn't fighting, it's kind of like a stalemate at best, But really, the Greeks are, because the Greeks are thousands going up against this one city, they just keep getting stopped at the gates. They can't make any progress. So anyway, Achilles, his cousin lover, says, "Well, if you're not going to fight, can I go fight for you? Uh, can I go take the Argonauts, the ant army out there to fight with us?" And he says, "Well, you can only take a third from each boat. They have, I think they only brought th three boats. So he brings like 150 soldiers out there with him, which would have normally been three or whatever, three times that out there with him. And his cousin says, "Can I wear your armor?" And he says, "You can wear my armor, but you can't have my spear or my
Are
shield."
they actual ants in the story?
Their ancestors were ants. In the story, they're the most ferocious fighters. They're men at
Okay.
this point, but they're the most ferocious fighters on the battlefield because
Okay.
they work like ants and they obey like ants. They don't stop for thirst. They don't stop for hunger. They only stop whenever their leader tells them to stop. And it's just blind obedience. That's Achilles' whole thing is truth and obedience. Like he's stoicism to a fault. He's unbridled, say what you mean what you say to a fault. That's Achilles. Um, he goes, his cousin lover takes uh takes the Argonauts, the Ant-Men out there, and they immediately start turning the tide of the battle. And the Trojans were like happy to not see Achilles on the battlefield because that's when they started winning. Well, they see what they think is Achilles coming, a guy wearing Achilles' armor, leading Achilles' I know I'm not saying that right, but Achilles' army, and they immediately start winning, and they all get fearful. They're like, "Oh shit, he's back!" And so they immediately beat him back to the gates. Well, Hector comes out, and he's the greatest prince warrior on the Trojan side. He comes out and fights who he thinks is Achilles, and it's this bloodthirsty battle, and actually ends up in the movie Troy, he ends up like almost effortlessly killing Achilles' cousin, but really Achilles' cousin has him on the fence and would have beat him a couple of times, but the gods intervened, like swept him away in a cloud of dust and put him on a different part of the beach. So he has to hack his way to there and ends up besting him again. And they like trip him and they poison him and do all this stuff. Well, he still ends up beating him, but one of the gods ends up tripping him, and Hector gets the best of him and is able to kill him. Well, this whole time, Achilles is in his tent thinking, like, kind of kicking back, getting drunk on wine, wearing his robes, thinking, "Oh, the Greeks have no chance without me." Well, word comes back to him that his lover has been killed, his cousin lover has been killed, and it's just hell breaks loose. So now it's unbridled rage. It's unbridled rage that goes out there on the battlefield. He ends up getting some new armor from his goddess mother. She hears him cry. His heart is broken over the death of his lover, and she's like, "What can I do to make this up for you?" And he's like, "Give me armor of the gods." And so she has Hephaestus, the blacksmith of the gods, make him the best armor that any mortal has ever won or ever wore. He is like, "I need a better sword and a better spear." So she gives him like this enchanted spear and an enchanted shield and an enchanted sword, and goes out there, and it's a bloodbath. Like literally they describe him wading through blood. He's just chopping everyone down. Well, he's making his way to Hector, who was so arrogant this is what Achilles is saying. He's like, "You're so arrogant to think that you can kill me." He's like, "I'm going to show you what it's like to fight me." And kind of the same thing happens where the gods move Hector because the gods like Hector. The gods move Hector out of his way. Well, one of the river gods um, like tries to interfere with Achilles, and so he like picks up his sword and starts hacking at the river. And like there's a story in here where like the deeper story is that he is lost his mind so much to rage, and he's lost his mind to so much of what he thinks he's right, to so much of what he thinks is right, that he's battling literally the forces of nature, even to doing something so nonsensical as to slashing at the water. Like you're not going to hurt the water by slashing at
Hmm.
it, but
Yeah.
he's so blind with rage that he actually starts attacking the water and hacking at it. And the river, one of the river gods, like just pours waves on him now, like almost drowns him. And his Achilles' mom comes and transports him out to safety and ends up dropping him off right in front of the face of Hector. Well, Achilles, make a super long story short or shorter. Achilles, it's like the battle royale of the century. It's the Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, but Achilles ends up getting him. Sticks his spear between his collar and his neck. Gets him. Um, so that's like the turning point in the war. Well, at this point, the Trojans just completely shut off their walls, but they're still able to, because the walls are still impenetrable. They're still able to hold off the Greeks by just pounding arrows and everything at the Greeks. Achilles, I missed a step. Achilles is going to take down the wall himself. Like he's still drunk on this rage and drunk on this power of truth and what he thinks is right. That he starts to go down. He starts to take on the walls himself, these impenetrable walls, and he's making a solid effort at it, to the point where the gods say we have to intervene. So Apollo, one of the gods of archery, I guess is like the main god of archery, whispers in Paris's ear, is like, "Hey, see that little spot on his heel? Why don't you shoot him there?" And he dips a Apollo dips an arrow. Oh, these are some of the arrows of Hercules that were like gifted to Troy, and another thing. But Hercules had these arrows that were dipped in the poison of that seven-headed serpent, the Baal of the Troys, their Leviathan. Um, so Apollo gives these magical arrows to Paris and is like, "Hey, get him right there on his hill." Well, shoots, and the arrow, Paris is not the master archer that anyone else is, but Apollo ends up taking his arrow himself and sticking Achilles right there on that one spot where his mom was holding him, the only spot that wasn't dipped in the river Styx. So ends up killing Achilles, and that's the turning point of the war. The Greeks are at this point getting their butt kicked. The war lasts like another couple of years, and everyone's like Agamemnon has given up. All the kings are like, "Hey, we have to head home. It's been 10 years. We're not making any progress. We haven't gotten past the walls. This is all going to be for nothing. We just need to count our losses and leave." Odysseus says, "I have a plan. How about we make the mascot of Troy is a horse?" Um, are you okay? Your camera's flickering. I don't know if you
Yeah, I'm
see
not
that.
sure. I personally am. I'm not flickering.
Oh, okay. Don't you flicker out on me now.
I'm not sure what my. I think my
Y-
microphone might have switched off too. What the heck is going on?
I can hear you. It's all good. I'll
Is my
just,
camera is my camera being weird again?
well, I mean, it's flickering, but it's all good. I'll continue.
Okay.
Um, Odysseus says, and Odysseus has always been known as like the smartest man in the world at this point. He's they call him wily and slippery. He comes up with all these like tricky plans to best them in one way or another. Odysseus says, "I have a plan. Let's build it. Let's tear apart some ships and make a giant horse. And let's leave one person behind to tell them what this horse is for." So they do that. They tear apart some ships, make a giant horse, and all of their fleet leaves, like goes out of eyesight, goes around the coast, and leaves this horse with one guy to tell them what the horse is for. Well, Odysseus and there's 30 people that are inside of this horse, and the plan is the horse is bigger than the gates of the wall. and they're going to trick the Trojans to make them tear down their gates to bring this horse into the wall, into the walls of the city. And at that point, the Greeks can jump on them. Well, that's kind of what happens. They end up they're able to like kind of compromise their wall, but not completely destroy the gate, and they bring the horse inside. They test it. They like jab spears in there and shoot arrows in it, try to set parts of it on fire, but they don't hear any men. The men inside have like super discipline. Some of them get killed, and they like put their mouths on their hand to force them from screaming and giving away the plan. They find one guy, the guy that they left, and he says, "You guys beat us. This is a gift to you. We're licking our wounds and going home." So they bring the horse inside. They all have this big party. Everyone's praising Paris because he's the one who led to the defeat of the Greeks. Well, as they have all this big party, they wait till they're all nice and drunk and passed out. The 30 guys slip out, kill the guards, and open the walls, open the gates. They set a signal fire. The Greeks come in and kill everyone. Like lower the walls, do do the walls of Jericho thing. Like every man, woman, gate, or every man, woman, donkey, everyone's got to die. They do that. They take a couple prizes here and there, but they all die. Now I'm getting into the Odyssey. So that's the story of the Battle of Troy. It's this big long war, and it's the the message is, like I said before, that Homer and even Stephen Fry are relating in here is the gods have interfered in the lives of man so much that they've made it this muddy, confusing drama that they say this is going to be the battle to end all battles. We're going to do this, and we're finally going to take our hands out of everything. That's the plan. That ends up not being what happens. Um, oh, so they all take their prizes and they all go home. Well, they start to go home.
Now,
Poseidon,
in
go ahead,
this
please.
story, or in this pantheon, or like,
Sure.
there's a bunch of different. I mean, it really reminds me of Marvel, but
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different universes and things like that.
Yep.
But in this, like, this would have been Greek mythology,
Yes.
and is an explanation of how this earth was created
Yeah.
and how we are created and
Uh-huh.
how we kind of relate to all of
Yeah.
that. Like, is there
Well,
like a
that
system of belief within these
y
stories?
yeah, and even Homer talks about this, and Stephen Fry talks about this, and many of the other authors that have made their own versions have talked about this. Is that like even the gods represent aspects of humanity, not, and this was like kind of like the crescendo and almost the end, but really the beginning of the end of like dogmatic belief for the Greeks. The Greeks thought we're picturing Zeus as the father of all the gods. Well, what they've come to kind of picture him after this was like almost as like the father archetype. Like, yeah, you can still make your shrines and still pray to him, but we don't imagine him as much as like a guy in the clouds, as much as we imagine him the archetype that the thumbprint is on all of us. Same thing with Ares, the thirst for war. Same thing with Athena. Same thing with Aphrodite. All these people. This is like the beginning of the end of their dogmatic beliefs, where the gods had their hands in everything, and more to like the picture of them as archetypes, as a part of humanity. This story is like the beginning of the end of that, and that
Okay.
that transition. Um, but Poseidon doesn't want to let that age go. Poseidon isn't ready, the god of the ocean. Triton is his Roman name, or Tritos. Uh,
Now,
Jupiter.
do the Romans have the same story, just different names?
So the story that the Romans in a weird way have part of their origin story in this, because one of the escapees of Troy, like one of the unknown sons, but he's named, ends up escaping and ends up fighting, or ends up his descendants end up founding Rome, and he escapes to Italy, but his descendants become the two twins that are suckled by a wolf. A whole nother. They're sent down a river in
Well,
a basket.
but in like
There's no
in
Romans in this story.
okay,
Yeah, because Rome wasn't a thing yet in this story.
okay.
Um, but they're still gonna carry the
I get.
animosity. Oh,
I
go
guess
ahead.
no. I forgot what my question was, but I just remembered. So you said that the Roman name for this god is
Oh, Triton. Triton
Triton.
is the Roman name for Poseidon.
So my question is, you've got one group of people who tell this story, right?
Hmm.
Do you have a Roman? Well, Rome doesn't exist. Well, it must if
Yeah,
there's a Roman. So is there a group of people that tell the same story with different names?
yes. Yeah, that's the
That's
Romans.
and
The
that's
Ro-
what's going on. So same story, different
yeah.
names.
Yeah. Well, everyone in the ancient world kind of draws their heritage from the Greeks, definitely. Because even Troy in the mythos is founded by some Greeks that ventured east into Asia. They picture, even though the Egyptians wouldn't say this themselves, but definitely like in the age of Alexander the Great, the Greeks made connection to the Egyptian gods and goddesses and made their just named them as their Greek counterparts, like Osiris, or maybe not Osiris, but Ra was their Apollo because Ra was the god of the sun. Same thing with like the Norse. The Norse had a god of the thunder, and they ended up equating them to Zeus, even though it wasn't perfectly matched out. They matched their pantheon. And
Isn't that what the Jews did with El?
well,
With
yes, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
they just gave a dip. They took a god that had this name and they gave it this name, and
Hmm.
he inherited his powers.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, there. I mean, it in the that pantheon, there was a combination of like there was a battle between Yahweh was like a northern Egyptian god that they adopted and kind of merged with El and made El Shaddai Yahweh or whatever. And his big counterpart that was already there was Baal, an existing storm god. So Yahweh was always battling Baal. There were two storm gods that were fighting each other, and Baal was considered the Leviathan, the slippery eel, or one of the Jotunheims. I can't remember their names, but like there's parallels in all of these pantheons of where, like I said, the Greeks matched him with the Egyptians, who matched him with the Ugaritic pantheon, who matched it with the Greeks, who matched it with everyone. Poseidon doesn't want to give up the age of strict god worship, and he's mad because he was one of the gods of Troy. He was one of their mascot gods. So when the Greeks leave, uh, and the god specifically pointed out Odysseus because he was the one who came up with the plan to destroy Troy, and which was supposed to be like the epitome of what man, almost like their Tower of Babel. Troy was like the epitome of what man can do, yada yada. Well, Odysseus is the one who came up with this plan. So some of the gods are really pissed off at Odysseus specifically, and Poseidon is really pissed off at Odysseus specifically. So whenever all the kings leave Troy to make their way finally back to Greece, a great sea storm comes on them and scatters all of them. Some of them for months, some of them for years. Odysseus ends up spending like over another 10 years lost at sea. He lands on, for the most part, for most of the journey, he has his men with him, his army with him. They land in this place of like the lotus eaters and there's like some connections between they think of what lotus and soma. They think maybe this might have been like a call to the Hindus or something. especially since the lotus was so big in that ancient time with the Hindus. But this lotus makes everyone drunk and high, and those men go there and they not want to leave because they find these new goddesses, like these nymphs that are like seducing all the men, making them happy and getting them drunk on this lotus plant, getting them high. And Odysseus was like, "No, we got to go." So he rounds up all his men, puts them back on the ship, and they're trying to make their way to Ithaca, but every time they get on the sea, Poseidon sends another storm. While this is happening, Menelaus has finally got this whole thing was over Helen. Menelaus recaptures Helen. Helen has kind of spoiled with her taste of Paris, like that puppy love has worn off, and she sees how much blood was spilled and all the deaths and all the tragedy of her infatuation with this boy who wasn't her husband. And so when Menelaus comes to get Helen, she's like, "Yeah, let's get out of here. I'm sorry. It was my mistake. Yada yada.
My bad.
My bad." And he was like, "There's nothing to forgive, my
For
lady."
10 years of war.
For 10 years of war and millions of deaths. Um, so they hit a storm themselves, but they make their way back to Menelaus's territory. Forgive me for not remembering where exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Agamemnon makes his way, he gets caught in a storm. He makes his way to Sparta. And like I said, Odysseus is lost at sea at this point, bouncing from islands to islands. When Agamemnon gets back, his wife still hasn't forgotten about the time that he killed their daughter for this whole bloody war. And so she has gotten a new man at this time. She still has a son and a daughter with Agamemnon that are like teenagers at this point. But she has a new boo who's waiting in the shadows, who is like one of the trusted men of Agamemnon that he left kind of in charge while he was gone. Um, she she basically seduces him. She's like, "Come on, husband, let me get you ready for bed." Well, first, before I'll let you get in bed, you need to take a bath. And so she gets him in this bathtub, pours all these sweet perfumes and oils in there, well, and gets him drunk. Well, while he's in the bath, she throws a net over him, and they both kill him. She stabs him with the sword, and he stabs him with a dagger, and they kill. It's like this big treachery. Well, they go to kill. She just killed her husband, and she goes to kill her kids, who they know are going to want vengeance against their father. Well, they escape. I can't remember the daughter's name, but Atreus is the name of their son. Atreus goes off and finds refuge in these other kingdoms, ends up getting brought up in the way that a young prince should be, learns war and learns statecraft and all this stuff. Well, he has a cousin lover also, and they they make a plan to go back to Sparta to recapture his father's throne and to take vengeance on his mom. Also, the biggest crime, well, the biggest crime that you can ever do, this kind of comes up in the story too. The biggest crime that you can ever do is mistreating a stranger, and they call that xenophobia, is fear of a stranger and mistreating a stranger. And that's like Zeus's biggest law is you always treat your beggars and you always treat your strangers, the least of these, you treat them right. And that's how you stay in the good favor of the gods, is treating strangers and treating beggars right. The second biggest crime that you can ever do is a blood crime. So killing your own family, killing your daughter, killing your husband, killing your mom, killing your dad, your sister, yada yada. That's like the second biggest uh, blight you can ever do on the gods, is killing a member of your own blood. Um, the queen of Sparta kills Agamemnon. Her new boo becomes the new king. The Prince Atreus gets brought into, or becomes a young man with one of his cousin lovers in their kingdom. Well, he gets this idea of vengeance. He's like, "We're going to go back and kill my mom." His sister's in on the plan too. They end up going back and doing exactly that. They trick, the daughter comes back and says, "Hey, I got bad news. Your son has died." and she has a servant or these two male servants with her, and who are bringing the ashes of Atreus. It's a trick. Well, she's like, well, come on in here and tell me about what happens. And as they're telling her about what happens, the Atreus and his sister both kill the queen and end up killing the new fake king also. But since they committed this crime of killing your family, he's immediately tormented by what we would call demons. These spirits end up that no one else can see and no one else can hear. He has the splitting migraine, and there's these spirits screaming in his ear, and he becomes like gauntly, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep. He's like scratching at himself, becomes demon possessed. Well, Athena comes to him, and another thing is Athena and Apollo are always kind of close together. Um, Apollo told he went to they ended up telling him to do this, to go back there and kill him. Well, the gods are like, well, we can't let this go unpunished, and Apollo and Athena are like, actually, we're the ones who told him to do this. And so they say, okay, well, he has to have like his own trials like Hercules. And Athena says, how about instead of being tried by God, we set up this thing where he can be tried by men. So they go to where Athens is, which is supposed to be like the wisest of the Greeks are known to assemble in Athens, like the birthplace of democracy. Socrates and Plato, they come from Athens much later. But they go down to Athens and establish, instead of being tried by the gods, they're tried by a group of elders, like a group of judges. And they set up the foundation in the Greek world of men judging themselves versus being judged by gods. Like I said, this is all a story of men taking their own destiny into their hands away from the
Hmm.
gods. Um, he's there's a trial there. One of his kind of half sisters by the Queen of Sparta and her new lover that killed Agamemnon. One of the daughters shows up there and testifies against him, and there ends up being a split trial. Like there's 12 judges. Six say he should die, six say he should be forgiven and live. Well, Athena herself appears before the court and says, this is what men are going to do now. Men are going to try themselves instead of being tried by the gods. And if there's ever a case in this where it's a split decision, the decision should always go toward mercy. You should always, if there's ever a hung jury or a hung court, the decision should always go to letting them go and letting them live. So that's what happened. They set up this practice of a man court or a human court, and they set up this practice of showing mercy in case there's ever like we don't know what to do, choose mercy. That's where this starts in Athens. That's only one of his trials. One of his trials, he has to do that. The other trial is he has to, there's these twin gods. I forget one of them. The other one's name is Artemis. Artemis and his twin are these twin gods that are also like gods of wisdom and judgment and mercy and all these things. His second trial was he has to go rescue, there's a wooden idol of Artemis on one of these islands. He has to go rescue this idol and bring it to Athens to set in their Parthenon. Well, as he makes his way to his island with his cousin lover, and there's this priestess who, like, these soldiers kidnap him whenever they come on the beach, and they bring her and they say, "Hey, sorry, you guys seem like nice lads, but we have this practice of where we have to sacrifice every Greek that shows up on the island. Sucks to suck." They bring him to this priestess who's supposed to be the one to sacrifice every Greek that shows up on the island. Well, she ends up being the sister, his Artemis's or Atreus's sister, that was supposed to be sacrificed on the pyre to the gods, that was swooped away at the last second, that everyone thinks is dead. That's her. And there's a whole nother story where she like Atreus doesn't immediately reveal his identity to her. She asks about what's going on. She asks about specifically Agamemnon. And she says, well, how about Atreus? And they're trying to hide his identity. So she's like, is Atreus alive? And he's like, oh, he's very much alive. They're like, well, I have a letter to bring to you. One of you has to stay here to be sacrificed. The other one has to deliver the letter. And so Atreus ends up choosing his cousin lover as the one to bring the message. And he says, you can kill me, but take him. And there, she was like, okay. And they say, well, what if there's pirates or what if we get shipwrecked? I can't risk this letter being destroyed. She goes, okay, that's right. You have to memorize this letter. This letter is uh, to Atreus. I'm your sister. I'm alive. And that's when they find out, like, oh, you're my sister, blah, 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 blah. They're like, can you manage to memorize that? She doesn't know that it's Atreus, but his cousin was like, yeah, I can manage to tell him that. And so as soon as she gets done talking, she was like, can you manage to find Atreus and tell him this? And he's like, yes, I can, my lady. You've done it yourself. Ta-da! Atreus is right here. So that she brings him the idol of Artemis, and so that kind of wraps up that whole story of the other Greek gods. In the meantime, Odysseus is still, so everyone else has like paid their penance, everyone else has done their sacrifices, done their trials, and the Greek world is all good, except for Odysseus. Odysseus goes to the Lotus Eaters. He gets his men to go away from that. They end up going to another island with the Cyclops. The Cyclops sleeps in a cave. They go inside the cave to at first try to talk to the Cyclops to see if he can tell him which way to go. Well, as he comes in, he immediately rolls a big boulder over the cave and locks him in. But he has these sheep, and he ends up eating a couple of Odysseus's men. And he gets drunk on this real strong wine that Odysseus brought on his journeys. He has this like super concentrated wine. As the Cyclops is passed out drunk, Odysseus wants to take this big spear and kill him. And his men are like, do it, master, do it, kill him. And he was like, if I kill him, we can't roll away the stone. So what I'm going to do instead is blind him. And when he wakes up in the morning, oh, uh, the Cyclops asks him, "What's your name?" And he says, "My name is Nobody." And it's on this island filled with other Cyclopses, but this Cyclops is in the cave. Odysseus tells him, "My name is Nobody." And he goes, "Well, Nobody, I'm going to eat all your men," and starts doing all these horrible things to him. And it's all blocked in there. The Cyclops gets drunk and passes out. They take a spear and jab it into the Cyclops' eye. And so he's screaming and whiling in pain, and all these other Cyclopses come to knock on the door and like, "What's going on?" And he says, "Nobody has stabbed me." And they're like, "What?" Nobody tricked me. And they're like, "Oh, he must be drunk." He's like, "No, no, you have to listen to me. Nobody, there's a man in here and it's nobody. Nobody tricked me. Nobody stabbed me. Nobody got me drunk." And they're like, "Okay, Cyclops, just sleep it off." Well, he ends up going to sleep, and he wakes up the next morning and rolls away the stone. And as he rolls away the stone, they hang on to the bellies of the sheep, and he feels each sheep as they're going out of the cave, but I guess he doesn't know enough to reach underneath them. And they end up slipping out of there. So he's losing a bunch of his men in the island of the Lotus Eaters, and then the Cyclops cave. And then as he's going out, he finally gets out to his ships, and the Cyclops realizes that he left, and Odysseus in his pride yells out, "It wasn't nobody, it was Odysseus, king of Ithaca. Odysseus is the one who tricked you." And he's like, "Oh yeah," and he picks up these big boulders and starts throwing them out to the ships. Well, these boulders end up hitting his other ships that are out there, and ends up like killing all of his fleet except for his own. And so his men are like, "Hey, Odysseus, shut the fuck up." Uh, so he ends up losing most of his fleet, and they barely escaping the island of the Cyclops. They There's some other stuff where like he gets drunk on this poison and ends up he shipwrecked all by himself on the island of Calypso. Calypso is this like sea nymph that ends up everything is destroyed. He washes ashore on her beach, and she keeps him there for years afterwards. While this is happening, Penelope is at home on Ithaca, and they have their young son who is now like 20 years old. Well, while she's raising her young son, suitors, they call them the suitors, come in, and it was like, hey, your husband is dead. It's time for you to marry someone. And she's like, I can't. My husband might still be out there alive. This lasts for like 10 years. Like 108 suitors move in, and they're, like I said, one of the biggest crime you can do is turn away a traveler or a stranger, a traveler and a stranger, or turn away a beggar. Well, all of these suitors claim Zeus's rights of like xenophobia and say, you can't turn me away. I'm a stranger. I'm a traveler. And so she has to let these suitors into her palace, and they're like raping the wait or not the waitresses, the maids. They're abusing the staff. They're eating up all the food. They're like pissing in the corner. They're like abusing her son. Um, she's living in hell the whole time, and she's waiting for Odysseus to come back with his big army, and he's gonna set this straight. Well, he's been gone for 20 years. His last island that he's on is on the island of Calypso, and Odysseus is not what we would like I said. Sexuality, I guess, was different 3,000 years ago because although they say he was faithful, he ends up having kids all over the place. He was not what we would call a faithful man. He,
He was faithful to something.
yeah, he was faithful to something. He beds Calypso, but it's almost like a forced, she makes him do all these crazy things. She makes him please her. She makes him do all this stuff, and he's like, I just want to go home. Can I go home to my wife and my family? And she's like, tough tit, you're not going anywhere. Well, I'm starting to wrap it up. Athena comes and tells, or no, Athena tells Zeus to tell Hermes, like, hey, send your messenger boy down there to set Calypso straight. My boy Odysseus has been gone long enough. And Athena, a goddess of wisdom, has always had a soft spot in her heart for Odysseus, who's the wisest of men. And Odysseus himself also happens to be like the great great grandson of Hermes, who's also a god of wisdom and like a god of trickery and sly tongue and all this stuff. And so she's like, "Hey, tell Calypso it's time to let our boys go, or to let our boy go." And all of his fleet, hundreds and hundreds of men, have been dead. All of his ships have been destroyed. But she's like, "Okay, fine." So uh, she gives him tools to build a boat. He builds a boat, and he sets sail back to Ithaca. Well, Athena comes to Odysseus on his way there, and it's like, "Hey, I got bad news for you. Your household has been in shambles since you've been gone. All these suitors have moved in. They're trying to make passes at your wife. She's been faithful, not like you. She's been faithful. She hasn't let any of them in her bed, but they've tormented your son. They've severely abused your staff. They've, killed a lot of your animals. They've, almost destroyed your palace. They're like these slobs, these drunken slobs that have moved in, and they're trying to get your stuff. You can't go in and beat them on your own. So what I'm going to do is make you look like an old man. And since you're an old man, you're going to look like a beggar, and you're going to go in there and be able to slip past all of their traps that they've left for you. Like I said, I'm fast forwarding this a ton. He finally gets to Ithaca, the first
How
living
long
being.
was this book?
Oh, these are books and books, but like hundreds of chapters. And this is like I said, the fourth and the last story of this, not of this epic, the epic of the Iliad, or the epic of the Odyssey or whatever. This is the last section. he gets back to Ithaca. The first living creature that recognizes Odysseus is his dog. Um, Not Ajax. Argoyle or Argoy, something like that. His name's like Argoyle or Argoy. Um, is his dog who's like 20 years old at this point. His dog immediately recognizes him, goes up and sniffs him, and then is happy that his masters came home and just falls over dead. So his dog recognizes him, is happy, and immediately dies. There's some other stuff that's going on. He's met up with his son. His son went out to go find word of him, and his son comes back and is like in on the plot. The plan is Penelope eventually comes down and says, "Hey, you guys have been here for 10 years or for 20 years. You're right. It's time for me to choose a husband. Here's how I'm going to choose my husband. Here is the bow of Odyssey or of Odysseus, who's supposed to, like this bow was created by a god and passed down to him through yada yada. And the first person that can string the bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads, they have 12 axe heads, which is hollow on the inside. They line up in a straight line. The first person who can string this bow and shoot an arrow straight through the 12 axe heads, I'll choose him as my husband. Like I said, the son is in on the plot. Um, the beggar, Odysseus, comes in. They kind of abuse him a little bit at first, but because of the law of xenophobia, they say he's allowed to stay. Um, all the suitors try, none of them can even string this bow. Well, Penelope is like, I'm tired of this. It's time for me to go up to my stairs. While these tutors like getting another drunken brawl of who's gonna be the one to say that they won, Odysseus, who's the old man beggar, says, "Hey, let me have a shot." And to everyone's surprise, he's able to string the bow. And as he strings the bow, he's able to shoot an arrow through all 12 axe heads. And at that point, his disguise comes off, and it's walloping time. It's clubbering time. His son has locked the door and taken all the swords and armor off the walls, and so it's just Odysseus with like his bow and arrow and whatever sword that his son brings him, and they get to commencing to killing all 108 suitors, and eventually they kill all 108 suitors. Penelope wakes up and says, "Oh, husband, you're here." It's almost happily ever after, except for there's another thing they have to do. The family of the suitors, who are all royals themselves, comes up and declares war on Ithaca. Well, Ithaca beats them, and but they commit some crimes of their own. They have to go off and they go off to fight this war. On their way back, they get Poseidon blows them to another island. Well, one of Odysseus's bastard boys that he made along the way ends up killing him as an invader. Well, as Odysseus is dying, the guy comes, "Who are you?" The guy comes up and says, "Who are you?" He's like, "My name is Odysseus from Ithaca." He goes, "Oh my God, you're my dad." So Odysseus dies in one of his bastard son's arms, and Athena whisks whisks Penelope, Odysseus's son, to and Odysseus's bastard boy, or no, Penelope and Odysseus's son to the island of that lady that he was just at, his last island. Well, he knocked her up on his way out there too, so she has a son. And so Athena says, "Hey, this is what you're going to do. Your son will marry Penelope, and Penelope's son will marry you, and that way you're both going to have Odysseus forever." And so that's the story of the Iliad. And we're about, what, an hour and a half in?
and
No.
and where we don't have time to go into it, but I dare ask, where does the Odyssey that is the Odyssey? The
That is
Iliad?
the Odyssey. Oh, no. The Iliad and the Odyssey are two different stories. The Odyssey is part two of the Iliad.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So yeah, I
But it's
just
fascinating.
it
So
is.
so what? But recently, that's not what you listened to. What you recently listened to was the Odyssey.
The Odyssey. I just finished up the Odyssey recently, and I'm also kind of at the same time listening to Creative Mythologies, the last book of Joseph Campbell,
Okay.
which is pretty cool on its own.
Have you listened to the Foods of the Gods or the Food of
Yeah,
the Gods?
Food of the Gods. I have, but it's been many years since I listened to it. I know you're in for a treat. That's all. It's all about psilocybin mushrooms, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm only I just started it this morning, so I'm probably only just barely through the first chapter. I like the way the audiobook is set up though,
Yeah.
because it's got pretty short segments, um, which for whatever reason in my mind it makes it a little bit easier to follow than if it's one long.
Well, I know you wanted to talk about the ego, and I think I'm giving you a little an alley oop to do so. But with the ego in mind, and with kind of that story of the Odyssey and even the Iliad, the story of the Trojans, and with even this was inspired by a sermon I heard at church today. The question I'm going to ask you, um, a thought came to my mind, and one of the things I miss the most of our old life as evangelicals, as being God's new chosen people, is I said it and I believed it like with every fiber of my being, even though it changed many times. I always felt like I had a calling on my life. I felt
Mhm.
like I was being called. When I was 16, that would have differed greatly from when I was 26 versus 36 and now in my 40s. But I always felt like I was being called for something. You know, at one point I thought it was something great. You know, definitely when I was a teenager, I would have told you I was being called to be a preacher or a pastor. Then I would have told you I was being called to be a Navy SEAL or, a warrior of some sort in the military. Then I felt like I was being called to be a protector. Um, in all of those situations, something changed to radically shift my calling, but I still felt like I was being called. Even now in my life, um, I feel like things are supposed to go a certain way. And I even do everything that I think is right to make those things happen the way that they're supposed to. And by forces outside of my own, um, those things end up not coming to fruition. Like things that I think are right. Like I do this, this is the way it should happen. I
Mhm.
I make like in the language of the Odyssey and Troy, I make my sacrifices. I do what's right. Like I listen to the gods. I I do X, so B is supposed to happen. I guess my question, there's a couple questions that come up, and I'm interested to hear what how the ego plays in this too. But what do you do now that we don't have that language of the calling anymore? Do you think you're still called for something? And I guess the bigger question is like what do you do now? Does that mean that you don't have a purpose? Because that's what I would have called the calling is
Mhm.
my purpose in life. Where does that purpose come from? And also, what do you do whenever you think things are supposed to be like you're being right. You're doing right and bad things keep on happening. And
Mhm.
even paint you out to be a bad guy potentially. even paint you to be a blasphemer or whatever the big bad word is. Is there still a calling? Is that a purpose? What do you do now that we're not using that language anymore?
Yeah.
I guess
Well, it's kind
there's a
of
rich pot to jump into.
yeah, and I'll probably forget some of the questions in there.
It's all good.
Um, but I it's kind of interesting the way that I've changed how I perceive theology is the same that I changed it's my view on my life's purpose has changed the same way. What I mean by that is like before I would have said that my spiritual gift was exhortation. I was an encourager. You know, I was called to be, I had several callings throughout my life, but one of them was to be a missionary. I felt called into law enforcement. I don't know. In hindsight, I guess really just like when you're called to date or stop dating a girl, you know, in high school.
Yeah.
Did God ever tell you to break up?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I,
I've
I
used that.
I broke up once because God was calling me to spend more time with him. But like yeah, so I used to think that God gave me a specific gift of exhortation, and that was my purpose in life. But then I kind of changed the thought around it and started thinking, and I asked you this one time too, like if you were a character in a story, what archetype would you be? And I think that my archetype would be a healer, which I think would include encouraging and comforting, and because these are just things that I think that I'm
Good at.
whatever, yeah, but also fills me up too, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so whatever, I've got the same purpose, a different. I guess the question now, and I think you asked it, is what's the source of that? And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's. Sometimes I wonder if it's past life stuff. If it's like if we actually have life purpose things, and if that's the case, it would be interesting to know what was the previous life that earned this one, or that
Yeah.
if not earned, set this one up. What do
I
you think? Because obviously there's still purpose, um,
yeah.
but it looks different.
Yeah. I uh and I don't know if there's a right or a wrong. Well, I know at least how I frame things now, at least in the context of what we're talking about. I don't know if there's a right or a wrong way to look at this, but the way that I'm looking at it now and is kind of just where I'm at right now on the path that has been laid before me is I have not so much of given up on God and given up on all of that stuff as much as I feel like I see it clearer now. Or yeah, I definitely feel like I see deeper meanings of it. And kind of like how the story of Troy and the Odyssey is there was there was a time, and it was almost like at the end of a big season of turmoil, but a lot of it was inner turmoil, but it was manifesting physically. The age of dogmatic belief in God has come to an end for me. At least the age of like temples and statues, using that language, but the age of
So,
like,
something in the beginning of the story you were saying, you said that in this time it was when they stopped believing in dogmatic
That's what
theology.
this was an illustration of. Yeah,
Yeah, it reminded me of that. I feel like I feel like that's very prevalent today.
definitely,
There's a big
definitely.
movement toward that.
There is, and it's been in me, and some people have gotten there sooner than me, and some people are going to get there later than me. But I feel like almost like the age of Aquarius, the age of revealing or whatever. I feel like this is almost the age of shedding some of that. At least it has been for me. But even in these stories, the people don't completely abandon the gods, quote unquote. They just change their interpretation of them. And so, like, what I'm getting at is I haven't thrown out the idea of God or gods, even. Now I'm comfortable saying that. Of course, that would have been heretical or blasphemous to say 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. But I just look at it more now as like um, the archetypes of the universe and the intelligence of the universe, if you even want to use that language, but something that's so true, it's truer than true.
Hmm.
It's not mathematically true, or at least it's not, and that doesn't necessarily have to be mathematically true. It's true to the point to where this is how I'm seeing the universe. This is even how I'm seeing life. And I'm not the first one to come to this conclusion. This is kind of the story that Homer was talking about 3,000 years ago. And the Buddha might have been talking about 500 or 600 years after him. And definitely Socrates was talking about. And if you want to get into some esoteric stuff, maybe even Jesus was talking about what the kingdom of heaven is within you. I'm looking at it, I'm looking at less of the shadows on the wall and looking more at life outside of the cave, even. But just like how these words of God and God's will maybe don't necessarily hold as much weight as they used to, the idea of a calling um, doesn't mean what it used to, but it's still there. It's just the language has changed to where now it's the hero's journey. Now I see myself as more on a journey. And go ahead.
Well, an interesting, I think, distinction is that a calling there feels like a, mm, I don't know if I would say penalty, but there's a risk in avoiding it, and you
Oh,
kind of
definitely.
have the story of Jonah
Yeah.
and Nineveh, and rejecting the call of God on your life and all that sort of thing, and the destruction that could come from that. Whereas a journey is more of a, at least it sounds like more of a voluntary process.
Maybe.
Do you think that there's, I I can see, and I guess to what I was trying to say earlier about the way that I see God now is more of a story, like more of a psychological explanation.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that you can still see tragedies that happen from not following your path, from not following your journey,
Yeah.
from not living out your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah, maybe. What where I where I'm kind of thinking about this now and where I've really I'm just using this to make sense of things that are going on in my life. I'm using this to kind of keep it together the same way that I've always used religion and theology and mythology is like as a tool to explain things that are going on in my mind and my heart and the world around me. Um, I am being called now, or at least the way that I see it, I think I'm being called to still just show up. I think I'm being called to where to face the battles that are before me. And everyone's got their own battles and everyone's got their things. Um, and everyone come, you always have an option. You always have an option like Jonah had or like Odysseus had. And even Paris had. He chose poorly. But there's like a right and a wrong answer. And then there's also the option of just avoiding it altogether. I've been I've been faced with whatever, with some difficulties, and like I said, like everyone always is, and I've had a couple different options of like, oh yeah, you want to wrong me? I can wrong you, MFer.
Mm-hmm.
Or another option is that I've had is to just totally placate to this person or this scenario, be like, whatever you say, I'll just give in to whatever you do, almost at to the point of defeating my true self, or definitely neglecting and harming my true self to the point of like pleasing others, not being true to myself, almost like the battle of or the battles between Achilles and Agamemnon. Achilles was blind justice and blind truth no matter what. Um, I could have the option of doing the opposite of Achilles and just bending over to the tie or to the wishes of others just to keep peace, whatever that is. Um, and I've also there's a bunch of options. One of the option that I've really thought about, not necessarily thinking about what the forward part of my brain, but it seems like is always an option, is to just crawl in a hole and die. Not literally, but like give up. And some,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes at different to be completely vulnerable not here now, but at different points in my life, it seemed like that was a literal option. Is like, you know what? Fuck this. I don't have to be here. And I know that's not the right option right now because there's still my story isn't over with, yada yada. There's still people that depend on me. I don't think the right option is to be like Achilles and stand up with my righteousness and blind stoicism and to take on everything, kind of like dam the boats full speed ahead. I don't think that's the best option for me. It's not. I've done that in the past. I've been the guy to be like, you know what? No, this, and I'm gonna stand on it. I'll make a mountain out of this molehill. And I felt righteous about that in the past. And I'm not saying that was completely wrong, even. I'm not damning that, but I've seen the consequences of that. And just at this point in my life, I feel like that's not the best option. Um, I'm on my hero's path. I'm everyone is on their everyone is the hero of their story. They're the Frodo of their story. They're the Odysseus, not necessarily the strongest, not necessarily the richest, not necessarily the whatever, not the this or that. They're just the person on their path. I'm the person on this path, and I feel like the only thing that is left for me to do is to just show up. And something I took from the sermon this morning, even though it wasn't completely how the lady preacher put it, is
That's like saying the male nurse.
the male nurse was,
Yeah, he's a nurse, but he's a male
you
nurse.
know, you know, was um, to show up and still look for opportunity, to still look for not just to show up and like, well, I'm here, but to also be one of the prayers that one of my mentors taught me. And you can redeem this and put it however you want in your mind. Is Lord, use me how you will. Like I'm here. I don't know what exactly I'm supposed to do, but whatever you got for me to do, give me the power to do it. Or show me what it is you want me to do. Show me what the best course of action is to take, and maybe just whatever the next thing is to do, I'll do it. If I find someone that trips and falls on the sidewalk, that's what I got to do. I got to go help them. If I see someone in need, if I see a wrong, if I see whatever it is, if I have a job to make this stool, use these instructions and make a chair, well, that's my next job. What I what I'm choosing not to do on this odyssey that I'm on is to not give up. That's my calling. My calling right now is to wake up when my alarm goes off, to help my wife with the kids, to look for areas that I can be of service. Because, obviously, without getting into details, I'm kind of going through the dumps right now. I'm kind of going through the blues. And giving up is not only giving up just isn't an option for me right now. And so the only thing I'm being called to do that I can see as I'm being called to do is to trudge,
Hmm.
to take the next step. And yeah, yeah. I don't know what my questions are, but or were necessarily, but like if there is still a calling, where does it come from? I think it comes from those archetypes that now I'm seeing instead of an old man in the clouds calling me and judging me. Now I'm seeing it from the lens that I've been given over the last 5, 6 years, which is what God really looks like to me. So like the archetypes, the nature of the universe, the nature of my heart, the nature of other people's hearts, the nature of need that's before me. That's God to me, is the universe around me and my heart and mind and how I'm making sense of that. That's where I feel like this calling is coming from. And the call is to show up. The call is to not give up. I mean, that sounds so dramatic, and it could be pretty dramatic, more than what the feel of this pod normally is. But it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that the calling always has to be, and certainly the results aren't always going to be huge and glamorous
Yeah.
and maybe even noticeable. Um, but I think that just showing up is a lot of times probably the biggest. I mean, it's the prerequisite, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if you're gonna hit a grand slam, you got to show up.
Yeah.
But even if
And
you're not going to hit a grand slam, you still got to show up.
yeah, exactly. Even when you strike out or
Um, yeah, I've been. I'm gonna start going back to the gym tomorrow.
yeah,
So I've been slacking so bad.
me and you
Um,
both.
man, so bad. But one of the things that I've thought about is that, yeah, just sometimes just getting there
Yeah.
is that's the win. Just getting there, and you may not have, and you probably won't have once I get consistent again and kind of get my baselines. I'm not going to have 15-pound increments.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna have massive gains, but by just showing up, I'll I'll eventually get there. And I think it's kind of the same with our calling. Is we're not always going to get these great assignments. Sometimes we're just going to get called to patrol 8-beat.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey man, 8-beat was a good beat.
but it wasn't glamorous.
Right.
Nobody wanted it
All right.
because it wasn't sexy. It was showing up,
Yeah.
learning how to do car stops on West Kellogg.
Hell yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I'm just trying to wrap my brain around here lately is that I always look at things in terms of my way or my agenda or
Yeah.
my goals or and like as it relates to ego, I just got to figure out how to get past that. You know,
Mm.
how to first off to not get irritated, but the irritation comes from thinking that you're in my way or that you're taking my time rather than considering, well, maybe it's their time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's their way. And I actually thought I wish I could remember the scenario that I had played out because I always one of the reasons I'm probably exhausted all the time is because I'm always having like these really in-depth imaginary conversations and imaginary scenarios with over around all sorts of things.
Oh yeah.
But I had this imaginary conversation with a service worker that I was displeased with their like they were rude and the the conversation that I had with myself about this imaginary conversation about this imaginary exchange was why would you expect someone to treat you kindly? And my response would be, well, because I treat others kindly. And my response to myself was have they ever interacted with you?
Right.
Why would you assume that somebody treat is going to know that you treat them kindly so that you does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it's not um I don't know, it was profound as I was thinking about it. Um
Yeah. How do you expect others A to have the same compass as you do, the same, expectations on how you treat others as you?
yeah,
And how would you expect them to know Jack Diddley about you,
they don't know
especially if
you.
you, yeah,
And I think and maybe that's the core of what I was feeling was that not everybody knows you and not everybody like
most people don't,
no and nobody has your perspective.
right?
Like nobody has been like literally been through and seen and experienced the things that you have. So
Nobody.
why should I assume that everybody has my thoughts and that
It
if
actually
they're
doesn't
different
make
that they're
sense.
wrong?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's my ego, or at least that's when I say that I've got this ego problem that I'm trying to figure out. That's where it comes from. Is this person's in my way? This person is annoying me. This person does things wrong. This person, instead of just taking a step back and say, hey, it's none like you're not the. It's not
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah.
You're not the standard. You're not the.
They have their
It's
own
not your
story.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even when we don't see it this way, we've said it, almost ad nauseum on here. Everyone thinks they're doing the right thing whenever they're doing whatever they're doing. Everyone, at least they're making sense of the actions they're taking
In that moment. Yeah.
in that
I
moment.
think I think you have to. I think we've said that.
Yeah. Yeah, because no one would intentionally work against themselves, even when people are kind of suffering a mental crisis and they do want to hurt themselves or whatever. They're doing it because they think that that makes sense.
That it will provide relief.
Yeah. Um, yeah, man. It's almost like I think what you're describing can be another name for God. So like not my will, but your will be done. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Um, the kingdom is more than just you. And it's not my will, it's your will. And especially if now you, God, are the entire universe, it's impossible for me to know your will unless I'm one with the universe. And I'm not there yet in this incarnation. And at least not in this mindset that I happen to be trapped in at this moment. Um, and you God, are the service worker that's having a bad day. You, God, are the whatever, the Middle Eastern fellow that cuts me off in traffic and gives me the finger. You are the person that is acting against how I think things should be.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's a tough pill to swallow, though.
Yeah, it really is. Um, yeah,
That it,
I won't elaborate on it more than that.
yeah, that's disillusion of the ego, though. And that is definitely one of, I think, the lessons in the journey.
Does it feel like the more you go down down the path of, I don't even know what you would call it, the hero's journey, or like I don't want to come across, I don't want people to
Oh,
I don't
you're
want to
doing
come
generous. You're real generous if you think people are still listening to us right now.
I'm thinking this might be chopped up into like 3 episodes.
Sure.
Um, I don't even know what to call it, but does it seem to you like the farther you go down the path, we'll just call it toward enlightenment, the more
Yeah.
you're like, this thing is never ending. Like there's more there, like there's more to work to heal. There's more to work on. There's more to, like, everywhere you look. It's like you thought you were going to replace a couple tiles,
Yeah.
and you realize that the entire structure is has to go.
Yeah.
And you just keep going. Every tile you pull back, you're like, damn it, there's more.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've thought about that. That exact thought has been in my mind lately, but almost at, well, not almost exactly how I've said it just a few minutes ago, and is like, that's not how this should be. Like I'm doing what I think I should do.
Yeah, so there should be progress, forward
There should be
progress.
progress. And I think to trudge itself, to take the next step, is progress. Even if it doesn't look like it's a forward movement, it's just showing up and taking the step is they say, and I've heard this confirmed not just from Alan Watts Instagram videos, but from actual uh, teachers and theologians and historians, is that um, not all of them, but many of the first congregations of Christianity, of Jesus followers, called themselves the Way.
Yeah.
Like the congregation themselves, they called themselves the Way, almost implying that heaven itself, this great reward, wasn't the destination as much as living in the way and walking on the way is the destination and the point.
Yes,
And
I agree with that.
much like Jesus or any great hero from any of the great mythologies, I mean, the Buddha, Krishna, um, Hercules, Odysseus, Jesus, Moses, Noah, they didn't have easy roads. They didn't have, it wasn't all pancakes and blowjobs, as Tucker Carlson likes to say, or rainbows and butterflies. Like almost the mark of a hero. And like I said, I think everyone is the hero in their story. The mark of the hero of facing that monster is the fact that you will face monsters. And the further you go on that journey, the more monsters there are to face.
Hmm. That was something I was going to say when you were talking about just some of the stuff you're going through. One of the options is to ignore it. Something that I've realized that I tend to do is I tend to ignore things that either scare me or make me uncomfortable. And it's like it's like in jujitsu, of which I've got one stripe on my white belt. Just
Congratulations.
let me
Right.
remind the world.
Right.
However, you might lose. They might expire.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If there's an expiration date on those stripes, mine's expired. But the one of the hard, are you still going, by the way?
Starting back up again in July. Me and Cash have plans. We've
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, one of the hardest things to do when you're sparring is to face, like roll over and face the person that's on top of you. Your instinct is to try to turn away from it.
Yeah.
And that's my instinct. And so one of the things that I'm working on doing is facing the things that make me scared. You're facing
Yeah.
the things that make me nervous. And if it makes you nervous, probably understanding it would probably be the number one antidote for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's just face it,
There's
spend time with it,
there
get
is
to
no
know it.
way to understand it without turning and facing it.
You got to
It is
look at it.
impossible logically.
Yeah. And so, sometimes it doesn't necessarily make sense. Like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do that with this life situation that I'm facing, the life struggle? And I guess what it means is saying, like, acknowledging it and saying, this is what it is. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm not going anywhere. Um,
In the words of Ryan Holiday, one of the authors you like, the obstacle is the way.
I think he says the only way.
Yeah. The obstacle is the only way. The only way is to and through that obstacle. There's no getting around it. Yeah, because I think even in the idea of reincarnation, and I think this does have an idea. This is part of karma and dharma and samsara. Uh, is that like, unfortunately, if you choose to not face this obstacle to the point of your own demise, like if you choose to whatever to totally avoid life and to totally avoid all of these obstacles, I think you're just going to get rinsed and repeated and come back and face it again. I
Yeah.
think there's no getting around it.
Try again, buddy.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Nice reset attempt. Here you go.
Like Mario Kart, you got to get to that checkpoint by the.
Yeah.
If you don't make it,
It's
then
just going to pick you up and put you back on the track.
you got to keep going.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's some credence in there. Even if it's beyond like the Sunday school version or the shadow on the wall explanation, I think that I think that there's deeper meanings in that. And like if reincarnation, may I be so bold to preach on an ideology that I know very little about. But if like dharma and karma, the Sunday school explanation of it is you're on this wheel of samsara, as the Buddhists call it, of just constant lives over and over again. I think that's just another explanation for what happens in this life. Like, oh, if you avoid not going to the gym, that pain and discomfort of not going to the gym, you're still going to face pain and discomfort, except this time it's of joint pain and obesity and diabetes and heart trouble. You're still going to be facing discomfort. You can either do it here on this way or you're going to do it there on this way. Either way, you're not avoiding this discomfort.
Hmm.
You just choose how you're going to face this discomfort.
All right. Well, we are pretty long.
Yeah.
So, um, I first off, you're probably the smartest guy that I know. I mean, you recited that whole story, all
I
of those
just
stories
recited
off the cuff.
I recited two of Homer's great masterpieces, two
Man,
epics.
and we didn't have that planned. We didn't. You
No.
didn't have notes. I'm so impressed.
No.
But I really enjoy hearing those kinds of stories, and I'm always intrigued how they impacted society and specifically theology in their with their audiences. Like
Yeah.
how did that make their audience see, or how did that help their audience see the world
Yeah.
in any culture is really interesting to me.
And I mean, it's so impactful that eons, millennia afterwards, it's still pulling on chords in our own mind and our own hearts and
Hmm.
in our own lives, like in the way that we see the world around us. I'm not going to say nobody, but like probably a very, very few people actually think of Zeus and Athena, in the way that they did 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But the story of that relationship between gods and men, and you know what I mean, and really between men and their own minds and men in their own hearts and the nature of their own hearts and the nature of the
Hmm.
world around them, you can still see, like I still see today.
Hmm.
Today, I'm wrestling with these ideas.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I still find value in the Bible is that I
Yeah.
think that it's telling stories that are truer than true. They're
Yes.
not factually true, but they're truer than true in that they're telling principles, just like I think the Iliad and
Hmm.
the Odyssey do.
And then you
But
get these little treats sometimes where some archaeologists will dig up a city in Turkey and they'll discover, oh, snap, this was Troy. Like it wasn't until I can't remember if it was the 80s or the 90s, but it was like 40 or so years ago that they discovered that Troy was a real place. For thousands and thousands of years, they thought this was all just a story Homer made up.
it's mind blowing.
It's nuts.
All right, I got to get.
All right, homie. Thanks for talking with me.
Always a pleasure. Love you, buddy.
Love you.